Jill's from Michigan. Oh, you're on mute.
How did that happen? Anyway,
You're
I have
muted.
two sons who live in a group home who have profound developmental disabilities. And I'm glad they live in a group home, because that's somewhat better than people who have their children living at home with them, their adult children living at home with them. I think they have a lot more trouble. I know in my kids' group home, for instance, none of the residents have had COVID. I don't know how they've avoided it, but because there's a lot of staff going in and out, and I don't know what the status of the staff is, but as far as they're getting infected. But I think what's happened with a lot of people who have people who come to their home, the family home, to take care of somebody, you get people who've had lots of different jobs in lots of different places, and they tend to bring the COVID with them. When I go to my son's group home, I always get the feeling that they're kind of on the edge of collapse, maybe because they've had people working so many overtime and so many shifts strung together, and it's very hard to get new people. And I think one thing that we need to look at is how we exert pressure on legislators to do what they need to do to improve the status and the pay of people with the direct support professionals. And I think that one thing that could help would be for family groups. The people who are kind of left out of this are the actual workers. Unless they're organized in a union or have contact, some other way of having contact, they're not represented. And I think if there were some way to bring families and the workers together to kind of work together to make sure everybody's informed, and that people know when there are new bills to support and that kind of thing, that would probably help quite a lot. But that's all I have to say right now.
Okay, great, thanks. So, okay, anyone else want to speak? I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mary Vitale.
Yes. Hi. I live here in the state of Missouri. I have a brother in a congregate facility, and Missouri has the distinction of paying their state workers almost the lowest pay across the nation. So it's good to hear our legislature this term is trying to increase some workers, which would include those that work with the developmentally disabled, giving them a minimum of a $15 start pay, which is about probably about $4 more than what they're starting now. Also, there's talk of a 5.5% increase. So our legislature at least is aware that we have great needs, and they're trying to do something about it. So that's what I wanted to share. Thanks.
Okay. Oh, the other issue. So some of the, clients, like my son has had some pretty severe behavioral issues. He's better now, luckily. And then there's others that have some medical issues. And some people have suggested, more pay for people with these issues. I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but it's just something that's been suggested. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Rita. Rita, then Jane, Anthony. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Okay, I should be okay now. Anyway, okay. I do know in Illinois that providers of the group homes are given more money for those individuals with behaviors and those individuals with more medical issues. And that's often their big push to get people out of congregate care, because they promise the provider they're going to give them this extra money. But what frequently will happen is they'll only get that money for maybe a year or a little bit longer, and then all of a sudden they say they don't need that anymore. So I think that is an issue too. And another issue we've had in Illinois is providers have been given that money to specifically use for that individual to give them the services they need, but then they don't. They pocket the money. So I think that's something that we all need to think about, that giving the provider more money is good, but I think it has to be specifically tied to DSP pay, which I believe in Illinois that this one is going to be, because the one in the past was not. And it ended up providers just skimmed off the top. So I think that's something that if they're going to do it, they absolutely need to say it is only for DSP paid, not for the provider to make money off of this. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, gosh, I don't know with my son. I don't think they paid them more money, but I don't know. Anyway, thanks. I think that'd be a little controversial though, because I've heard this at special eds in school that some people think the teachers in special ed should be getting more money than regular education teachers. But
yeah, when you move into a community placement, they do a packet for you and they do your budget according to what your needs are. So like my brother in his group home is paid differently than someone else who lives in his same group home. Okay. It depends on their needs and whatever. But anyhow, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jane, Anthony?
Yeah, I'm going to speak.
From Virginia, right? Virginia?
Wait. Yeah, Virginia.
Okay.
We're the home of used to have Northern Virginia Training Center, and I see a lot of familiar faces. So hi.
That's the one they closed.
A couple of things. I agree with Rita, who just came in about when you're in the group home, if you have higher needs, at least in Virginia, you are paid more. It's based on the CIS, what's CIS again? Whatever.
Yeah.
It's based on your needs. And a few things where there's a real push in our state where we've got to raise money for the day programs. The providers there are not getting enough, and many of them are closing their doors. And with COVID going on, the kids are doing nothing. We actually had to spend down because anything that my son was doing has been canceled. So we had to go buy sheets and stuff like this so that we didn't hit the maximum. I'll just hit a couple of things here. The Illinois idea of a pilot project in high school to train DSPs, I think is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I don't know how we do that nationally, but if we can make that happen, that would be terrific. Way back when the Northern Virginia Training Center was alive and well, we had training for all sorts of things, and it was nurses, this, that, and it's a window in, and that's essential. I'd like some of the experts in this group, whether it's Hugo or Jill or somebody, since the training center closed, and this is a real big push, all of you guys who still have facilities, cherish them, and not only cherish them, get your parents group going, grown, and reach out to friends of, family of, etc., because this is how you reach legislators. We used to be able to get to Richmond to make a big point, to do whatever. Well, when I write in now is just myself, or tack on my husband's name, or say what group home I'm in. I frequently get an email back from the legislators saying, you're not in my district, so why don't you figure out, here's the place where you look up who's in your district. When you call from the training center or developmental center, or whatever it's called in your state, you can say your residents are from throughout the state, and you are represented by a number of people, and you can get people to the state capitol, and you can make sure you know these legislators, because what's happened in the 6 years since the training center has closed, legislators change, and they used to really know me. They don't really know me anymore. A few of them do, but I'm not there all the time. And to get somebody in another group home that's in another state to come and fight for my issue with my group home when their group home is doing something else is almost, it's not doable. But I whatever we can do to get the money up In the meantime, be a presence in your group home. And so many of the group homes, at least the one that we're with, they're not promoting parent involvement the way the facilities did. You got to push yourself in there. And when I say push yourself in there, whether it's sending cookies or just the peering, or in my son's case, we have a FaceTime appointment once a week, so that I can see him and a staff person is there, and I get a feeling for what's going on. But make yourself known, because if you're not known and you're invisible, it will go away. So until they get more pay, they got to get, I learned this in VOR, the only thing you can say to a volunteer is thank you, and then find another way to say thank you again. So they're basically volunteering. So till you get them up and running with more money, figure out ways to do nice little things and appreciative, and but you who have facilities, guard them with your life, because you don't have that in group homes. You do
I
not.
think we're trying.
Um,
So Joe wanted, maybe Gail could give an update on what's going
Bob
on.
had a couple of.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, and then Gail, maybe you could give an update on the federal legislation.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a footnote comment on, I looked at the sort of the morale is quite good in the group home that our son is in, and but there is no good metric out there. All of the data that's collected to determine how well the system is doing, very little of it. In fact, I have a hard time thinking of any of the metrics at all that look at the morale and the conditions that the staff are enduring in their work. So the staff are invisible. They're invisible because they're so fragmented. They don't have organized representation. And they're invisible because no one collects any data on them. And as Jane pointed out, no one can advocate for them because, again, even the parents are fragmented and the providers are looked upon as having self-interest, and they're largely ignored by the legislators. At least that's what we've been told. And I got a few documents from Virginia that indicated the amount of overhead that our system has become very legalistic. A lot of permissions to do almost anything, and you have to fight for it, and the big delays and so forth. And the direct staff spend, 10, 15, 20% of their time on overhead, and the nursing staff spend more than half their time on it. And the social workers are up in the 90, 95% time. And the state considers it just a freebie whenever they add another reporting requirement. So they're really, what shall I say, the amount of accountability and looking over your shoulder is very demoralizing, and it just occupies a great deal of time that could be spent on other things. And just as a final comment, I did a little wag about saving 10% of the overhead in Virginia over a course of 3 years would be something like $100 million. It would be enough to really upgrade their computer system and rethink the whole data collection. Again, there is no advocate to bring these sorts of things to attention. So there are huge opportunities, but no levers and no visibility.
So I agree with you with all the bureaucracy. I think it's ridiculous how much time they spent on filling out charts or papers. I don't know. But there is a group in Illinois called They Deserve More that advocates for the direct service professionals. So that's a good thing, I guess. And I know with the group home where my son is, they don't want a lot of parent involvement, is my impression. Anyway, Gail, can you give an update on some federal legislation?
Absolutely. And I'll invite Hugo to fill in any gaps. He's been a good partner in all of this with me. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Gail Gerdes with Health Policy Source, and I've been working with Hugo and Harris and Sam and the legislative committee, a variety of you over the past several months to further your priorities before Congress. And the DSP issue is one. I can focus on that one, but also we've been working, the Build Back Better may ring a bell for some of y'all. That was for most of last year. That was a large legislative vehicle that was a priority from the administration as well as the congressional leadership. It is, and it included some provisions that were good, some that were not so good, a variety of things. The long story short is that it's not going anywhere right now. And without sounding overly political, because that's not the intent, while the Democrats have the House and the Senate and the president, it's basically a tie in the Senate, and it's not much more than a tie in the House. And so in terms of them having leverage to actually pass monumental, if you will, or generational legislation, they don't have the votes for that. And that's the short summation with a couple of gaps in it, but the short summation of it as to why the Build Back Better is not likely to go anywhere as is. That being said, it was a great tool for Hugo and I, and like I said, a variety of folks. We've been meeting consistently on Capitol Hill with staff and educating them, re-educating them, pointing out nuances with how a variety of pieces of legislation impact particularly the IDD population. From 14C and the quote unquote, sheltered workshops to the funding for home and community-based services, and as well as the funding for ICFs and the need for parity amongst those issues. Hugo, I will say, is fantastic at, I think you see the light bulb go on with a lot of staffers when we're in the meetings, because they don't realize that often how a business may be structured that has some HCBS employees as well as some ICF employees. And specifically to what y'all are talking about, there's some wage differentials with that. There can be funding differentials for how the business is structured and how an owner can pay staff, and where staff may choose because they do get the choice, right? As they should choose to work, and so where that can create some staffing issues for the different living settings. And so that's been, I think it's been great to see some real progress in staff understanding these nuances that you all live day in and day out, but as a healthcare staffer or a labor staffer on the Hill, it's harder for them to know the nuances of. I think we're going to hopefully be seeing at every meeting, it's go visit a facility, go visit a facility, go visit of different types, get it, whether it's a group home, whether it's an ICF, whether it's a 14C program. We are always encouraging the staff to go and or the member to go and see these facilities so that they can truly get to that next level, right? We're getting, and in fact, I just got off of a call with a staffer from New Jersey, and it's one that we've met with a number of times, and we've been we're part of a coalition that's been really helpful. And I think, and it was great to see the staffer, she was still pushing back, but she was getting it more and more. It's that, you have to communicate these things a million times, and it takes a lot of patience. And so right now it's a couple of y'all have mentioned data that's come up in these meetings as well. We've talked about different ways that the congressional staff could potentially help request data from federal agencies, and not to give the workers more work, but to take the data that's already out there and ask smart questions, right? Ask the right questions that reflect how these things are operationalized and how they impact the employees and how they impact the individuals living in these settings and the care that they receive and the quality of the care that they receive. So that's something that we're actively engaging on, as well as trying to improve the data that's being used to make these decisions so that it is as accurate of the real life processes and quality of care and quality of life that is going on. But I don't want to talk for too long, Hugo, or anyone else that's, am I missing anything here?
No, I would just like to add that working with Gail has been a huge pleasure. I'd like to thank Joe Valenti for having participated in getting us in touch with Gail and Health Policy Source, and let you know that since Gail and I started working together, I've been working also with Together for Choice, a group of people put together by Mickey Adelson, the group that Harris turned us on to, the Coalition to Preserve 14C, and other individuals and groups. We have had 50 meetings with members of Congress in the last several months. We've really been like getting out there, speaking to people, getting the word across about the DSP crisis, getting parity for ICFs, protecting 14C and vocational centers. I mean, it's been amazing. It's been a lot of work.
I just pulled up. I have a spreadsheet of the latest round that the VOR individually is doing, and it's got about 30 members that we have not reached out to yet, which was at least for most of them, but they're ones that are on key committees or they're part of different caucuses that handle these issues. And like I said, probably a handful of them we've met with before, and it'll be good to touch base with them again. And then the other ones are, there's a 535 members in Congress, and we're making our way through them, and we're double checking with some of them, and we're triple checking with some of them, and they are finding us to be a resource, which is huge. So that is great.
Okay, thank you, Gail and Hugo. So anyone else want to say anything?
Actually, Joe just asked if he could join this thread. So.
Oh, Joe, did you want to talk?
Yeah, if I could just, and thanks, Hugo, and for saying something. Let me just we're from Nebraska. I'm from Nebraska. We have a son at an ICF here in Nebraska. It's the only ICF that we have, and it's state run. Let me give you just an update on the DSP side. And I don't know if Hugo's had a chance to share all this information with you. I know he shared it with Gail, but I was actually quite surprised to hear that there have been a number of studies done over the last 5-6 years that talked about this shortage that was going to occur. So it's not just COVID related. I guess I just would, and I'm sure a number of you on the call realize this, it's just not the pandemic that caused this. This was forecasted, and now we're seeing it, and maybe the pandemic, accentuated it or accelerated the problem. But let me talk a little bit about wages. And again, I don't know all of you. I know a few of you, but I would just encourage you not to be naive to think that wages is going to solve this issue alone. Where our son Donnie is at the ICF, the union was able to negotiate some pretty significant wages. I mean, they're in the $20 plus range, depending on seniority and tenure and so forth. And speaking of high risk, our son has been high risk for a very long time and lots of behavior. So whoever takes care of him deserves whatever they can get, because we weren't able to do it. But having said that, even in our state, and I can't speak for all your states, obviously. Sorry.
Catherine Homberger.
Never fails. I'll get rid of it. Sorry. So what I was going to say is, wages alone, our unemployment rate is in about the 1.5 range, 1.6 range. And I don't mean to sound cynical. I just don't know where the people are going to come from. I mean, I don't think you get them out of McDonald's or Amazon or whatever, or Google. It's just, there's just a shortage of people. Now, Nebraska probably doesn't have a lot to offer people, but I mean, it is a pretty good state overall. So I would just tell you that, again, wages alone isn't going to do it. The other quality that having run a business for a lot of years, the other big factor is, these individuals want to know what the future looks like if they come to work sometimes. They want to know where they can move to. Is it just they're going to be DSPs forever, or can they move within the organization? So I pass that on, G, for what it's worth. And lastly, I would just tell you, and I know it was already mentioned, when these states increase the rates and they get the rate increase approved by CMS, that money, as you've already said, doesn't always go to the DSPs. And I know there are states, and Gail's probably aware, and Hugo are probably aware of which ones they are, but the legislature, and I just testified this week to our legislature that, they can direct increases to the DSPs, but they have to take the responsibility to do that. So I probably have talked too long, but I appreciate the opportunity to be on this call and see all of you. And I wish you the best. It's a very challenging time for all of us in a number of areas, and what's just happening in Ukraine isn't helping it. But again, but I won't get into that because that's too much politics for today. And I'm not drinking yet, so I need to drink to do that. So
That's for later. So
thank you. Thank you, Hugo. Thank you, Gail.
Thank you, Joe. And let me just say, you are so correct. It's not just the wages. There has to be a career path. There has to be training. There has to be appreciation. The people I know who've worked years as DSPs have a commitment to it. They get something back from it. But if they can't support their families, if they aren't getting health care paid for and so on, they are going to move on. So thank you.
the other thing, so the career path, I think that's obviously a great suggestion, and I think the insurance and benefits, like Hugo just mentioned. The other thing, I just was wondering, it seems like they should have like people like in the social work schools and the nursing schools. Why aren't they doing internships or doing part of their training in like the in some of these facilities? I mean, I think it would expose more people to these, to our children and what they're like. And I just think it would overall be a good idea. And there was something else I was going to say, but I forget. Age, I can't always remember. But I think, Mickey, you wanted to say something.
Yeah. Yeah, a couple more things. First of all, I think we need to thank Hugo as well. And I think Hugo, every Friday I wait for your weekly update. And I think it's really important that you have been continuing to talk about the other groups. Together for Choice, we have the National Council for Severe Autism. And also, I think Harris Capps, he joins in like tomorrow, A-Team USA, they're working specifically on the 14C issue, keeping that alive. So I think that it's better now, a little bit better, because there is a partnership going on, and we're promoting each other. We're talking to each other. And I think we've been so scattered all along that nobody knows what Together for Choice is. So I think it's really important that Hugo keeps putting these things out on Friday. The other thing too, Hugo, one of the things I find that is there's got to be a level to stay at a DSP level, because you can go so far. And there are a lot of people that just are good at being a DSP and they don't want to go into that managerial. So the next step is like, can we have a junior and senior, and paying somebody, because that's the most important person to all of us, is that direct care person. So when we negotiate, or when you talk about providing enough money for that DSP, I think the sky's the limit for me. So that's just another point on that DSP. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to say anything? Or
I think I have my hand up.
okay. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to agree.
Okay.
I was just going to agree with Joe, because, in Illinois at the state centers, those people, their pay is very good, and they have insurance. They're probably $20 an hour, whatever. But it's just very hard to find workers at all at this time. And I think to find DSPs is even harder because it is a very difficult job. But I just said, I really agree with everyone is saying. It's just really hard to find actually people who want to work, and we shall see what happens. But pay isn't just everything. I think a lot has to do with making them feel good about themselves, appreciating whatever. So a lot of good ideas from everyone. Thank you.
And if anyone ever wants to visit Murray Center, it's awesome.
Yes,
Yes.
I will take you. Yes. Yes, thank you.
Could I say one more thing that might be?
And then Sue, you're next. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Joe.
I think one of the ideas, and Hugo, Gail, I don't know if this is even worth the effort, but because I know they're pretty staunch and their CMS is pretty staunch in their beliefs and where they're trying to push things. But, I think on the DSP side, the community side even, I really would hope somehow, some way we could figure out a way to get across the CMS. The settings rule has to be maybe considered it has to be adjusted and considered differently, even for the community, where the community would have a better chance of serving more individuals, in my opinion, which is probably not worth a whole lot, if you could group services. But right now, as you know, in the settings rule, they're really very staunch on, what's institutional, what's not institutional. But I think they're out, in my, again, humble opinion, I think they're very much out of date with what the current environment is. But I'm sure that's not the approach Gail would want to take, telling them they're out of date. But, you get, trying to get the legislators is one thing, trying to get the CMS is a whole other issue. But that's just a crazy thought. Thank you.
It's not a crazy thought. And Together for Choice has been working very hard on the settings rule for a number of years because, for one thing, it does affect Misericordia a lot. One value of an ICF is that you have the services close enough to each other that you can share resources. You can have a full-time nurse on staff. You can have doctor and 5 days a week and on call at night. If group homes are spread across a large state like yours, then there's no way they can provide that. But if they can cluster some of them together a little better and pool their resources, they can survive better. And we want that. So you're right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Sue Hagner, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to contribute to follow up a little bit on what Gail was talking about. I'm the parent of two severely disabled adult sons that are 43 and 48 years old. They both live in an ICF. One's lived there for 30 years. The other one just moved in last fall. They live at the same ICF. It's eight group homes on 12 acres of property on prime lakeshore property in a northern suburb of the Twin Cities. It's really a nice facility. It's been around for a long time. It is owned by the county and always has been since back in the early 60s. And those are union jobs. So the starting salary there is $20 an hour. Also, they get ongoing training. They have good backup and that sort of thing. So the quality is there better than what has been in the group homes. In the group homes, since the pandemic, I mean, they were having problems before the pandemic, but the pandemic exposed the problem of DSP staffing and a number of the group. I've listened to some of the hearings at the Capitol and they're reporting that they're closing, a lot of them, and they're asking family members to take the family member back home. So it's really created a tough situation. But back to what Gail had done, last year I contacted some folks at the University of Minnesota, because that's where I did my studies. And I talked to a couple of professors. They're part of what's called the Institute for Community Integration. And they have developed a set of skills and knowledge for DSPs. And they've talked about what needs to be done for training, but they pointed out to me what Gail had talked about earlier is that At the Department of Labor, U.S. Department of Labor, there is no definition for that kind of job. And so there's no recognition for that kind of job. And so if we could get something done there, that would help a little bit. But also in looking at the business models of some of the group homes, what I've noticed is they're administrative heavy. I've done business work, and so they're very administrative heavy, and they're not rethinking their business model to figure out where they can free up some funds in order to be able to pay DSPs more. Our legislature right now is dealing with a bill that's going to put some one-time money from the CARES Act out into helping group homes for some staffing, but it's really a short-term fix. They don't know what they're going to do long-term. That's the status here.
Thanks. Jane, and Bob Anthony, did you want to say something?
Something quickly. Sue, I think you hit on a lot of things there. And I keep going back to, we had Nirvana and they got taken away from us at Northern Virginia Training Center, frankly, because we were too good and they wanted to kill it in the state. So they broke the back of the training center and we were gone. But what we had was a lot. I mean, if we could just take the ideas that we have here and share them, and hopefully there are people in different places that pick up a piece of it. But we had 23 internships, you name it. There was an internship, whether it was with the genetic folks at Howard or nurses who would come around and do their practicum there. And there are a couple of things that benefited from, believe it or not, COVID. Telemedicine. Maybe we could get that into the group homes. You know, it's, and one of the things, we had this regional community support center, originally called the Center of Excellence, but the state couldn't handle the title. And it got repeated in each of the centers. And rather than trying to get the same thing in each center, the thing to do was to take whatever it is that your group, well, probably the centers, has as a specialty. Do you have a great dental clinic there? Do you have a great speech thing there? And use that as training. And what we had, and again, if you can get this going, we opened our doors to anybody in the community, not only to get services through medical, but to come and come to any of the special training that was there. So if the speech people were putting on a training, come on in. If this geneticist came by and was talking about something new and why it's important to find out which rare diseases are represented in your facility, let everybody come, because the more you share, the further it goes. But it's taking those little ideas, and if somebody has an idea, going with it elsewhere when you think it will fly. But you almost do need to have some person who, to them, this is nirvana and they're going to go with it and to stay with it. And it's possible, and you got to fly under the radar a bit so you don't get destroyed.
I wanted to comment, as usual, on something a little bit different. And that was just as a footnote, the morale and the cohesiveness of the staff at a group home or a small unit is critically important for two major reasons. Three. One is it's a more caring environment for the people that are being served, but it's also, it really improves retention. And when you have, like, our son needs someone who really knows his behavior and predilections, because his communication he has no communication skills other than just reading his behavior. And so you really have to have a lot of experience to tune into what's going on. But there's another dimension, which is one of the unspeakable parts, which is that the most effective way to deter abuse, neglect, and bad behavior is for staff to understand, the staff that are on site to recognize what's going on and being willing as part of the cohesiveness of that community to let it be known. In other words, the protection is when the staff have a commitment to the well-being of the individuals, and they won't tolerate bad behavior on the part of one particular staff member, because the other more official ways like licensing and occasional visits and so on have virtually no deterrent effect. And so all of these things come out of having a social bonding in the community. And the same, I think, is another footnote, is many of the medical skills that are necessary for the folk we're talking about are subspecialties of the medical healthcare system. And in order to cultivate those specialties, we have to have some sort of networking of clients, of panels that those doctors and nurses and therapists deal with. And I don't see those social and organizational vehicles being promoted by the states or by the federal government. I see a lot of, it's treated atomistically, like everything is separate from everything else. And again, if any of you can think of a way to get this visible and maybe get a university connected with looking at it, I think there's a lot to be gained.
Thank you. So it's 4:02. So I think time is up. We could talk all day, I'm sure, about our kids, our loved ones. So thank you, everyone, for coming. I hope you found it valuable. And if you have any ideas for future meetings or the format of it, let us know. And I mean, I know it really helps me to hear other people's idea. And I find it encouraging. You know, there's always hope, right?